Chapter 15, Sample Problem Number 9. 4 blocks are suspended from strings in water. Cubes A and C are at the same depth, and cubes B and D are at the same depth. And we are asked in this to rank the tensions in the strings. So let's look at case A as our prototypical guy. And we know that in case A, there would be, of course, the weight of A, which is mg downward. There'll be a buoyant force pulling upward, and there'll be a tension in the string also pulling upward. That's what we're looking for. And we know that the sum of the forces in the y direction has to be the mass times the acceleration in the y direction, and they are suspended and hanging out, so the acceleration is 0, so the total force has to be 0, which means that Ft minus mg plus Fb has to be 0. Or the tension, the thing we want, is equal to the mass of the block times g minus the buoyant force. In other words, the tension has to make up whatever the buoyant force can't provide, which makes some sense. But we can go a little further than that and say the tension has to be the mass of the block times g minus, and the buoyant force, remember, is the weight of the displaced water, which is the density of water times the volume, and then times g to make it into a weight. So remember, this is the mass of the displaced water. And everyone's going to share rho, and they're going to share the g's. So we can do a little bit further, and we can say that the tension force has to be, and we can kind of pull out the things that we can pull out the g, which is unimportant, and I'll pull out here, and I'm left with the mass of the block minus the density of water times the volume. Unfortunately, at that point, we actually have to do this, and we will use an additional factoid that's worth knowing, which is that the density of water is 1 gram per cubic centimeter. And since everybody here is already in terms of grams and cubic centimeters, this should work out pretty nicely. So we can just do a little chart and say A, B, C, and D. And then we know that the masses are 60 and 80 and 60 and 80, and that rho times V is going to be, I'm going to put minus, 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 and then rho times V is going to be 40 for that, and 20, and 20, and 40, which means we end up with 20 here, oops, and 60, and 40, and 40. And so our final thing, just reading these off, say that C is the same as D, B is greater than those two, and A is less than those two.